Hello, I hope that you're all doing well. I haven't filmed in a long time. I think it might be 4 months to the day actually, because the last video I posted was Christmas 2025 and today is the 25th of April. I am planning on making a big catch-up video to talk about the recent months and the upcoming months and my plans for the future, but that is for another time. Today I want to introduce you to my new writing project. This is months in the making. I have had this idea brewing in my head, I think since the end of 2025. I've poured so much of myself into it and I am finally ready to share it. So this video is going to serve as an introduction to the Hawthorn Letters, which is the name of my project. I thought to give you a taste of the Hawthorn Letters, I would read you the introduction of a piece that I've written for Substack that I will be publishing shortly, entitled A Guide to the Hawthorn Letters. So I'm going to read you the introduction so that you can just get a glimpse of what the Hawthorn Letters are, and hopefully you will be as excited as I am. A Guide to the Hawthorn Letters, an introduction to this whimsical, absurd fiction writing project. The Hawthorn Letters follow the bizarre adventures of Matilda Hawthorn in Edinburgh, where she has lived and worked for the Old Town Gazette for the past few years and where she meets a certain Mr. Buttons. This long-haired ginger cat who wears a green tweed waistcoat and reads poetry quickly becomes Matilda's travelling companion, and together they start roaming the United Kingdom in search of adventure. In a special column in the Gazette entitled The Hawthorn Letters, she recounts to readers addressed as a dear friend in the form of letters, the wonderful places she visits, the strange people she encounters, and the odd events that take place around her during her travels. So that is just a very short introduction, just to give you a bit of an insight into what this project is. And now for the rest of the video, I'm going to talk about why I had this idea, why I chose this specific genre of fiction, my process, the platform, of course, which is going to be Substack. Yeah, and I also really want to talk about vulnerability as a writer and the void, which sounds quite daunting, but I will elaborate on that later in the video. First and foremost, if you didn't know, I am a writer. I've been writing for a very long time. I mainly write poetry. I think I wrote my first poem when I was around 5. And poetry has always had a very important place in my life. But it's only a few years ago that I realised that writing was my passion and was what I absolutely wanted to do with my life. My writing explores nature and my connection to it, my deep cosmical emotions as a hypersensitive person, and the quiet tragedies of life and excavations of the heart, if you will. So my poetry is usually quite dark. I've had a very traumatic life, so my inspiration comes from that a lot, how ancient my soul feels. So my writing often explores somber themes, and I also struggle with venturing into maybe less structured writing because I have a very academic mind. Disorder scares me. However, I have felt this longing to try something different with my writing because I do think that I might have an ability to write something that doesn't make me want to cry and that maybe procures the opposite emotion. It's perhaps less to explore my feelings, my emotions, my heart and my soul, but rather to try and connect with my inner child in a way. So I chose absurd fiction because I remember how much I loved it as a kid. I had these 2 books by Chris Riddell, who is a British writer and illustrator, that I absolutely adored, and they are the epitome of absurd fiction. And I've always been very intrigued by this genre. I think it's so interesting because it allows you to venture into a very interesting world while still maintaining you know, structure, and it can still be orderly, which I need, but I love making up things. As a kid, I had a very rich imagination and I really wanted to channel that, and so that is why I chose absurd fiction. It was to kind of try and detach myself from my heavily academia focused brain, if that makes sense. And I think that I've been able to do it while working on this project. The idea came progressively, but at the same time quite spontaneously. The characters sort of appeared out of thin air. I immediately had the vision for Matilda Hawthorn. I immediately knew that my character would be named Matilda Hawthorn. I had a few other names in mind, but I knew my heart was set on that one. So I debated for a little bit. I just knew that it was Matilda Hawthorn for some reason. I don't know why. That's just what my brain went to immediately. And then Mr. Buttons, well, Mr. Bartholomew Buttons, that's his first name, but as you will see if you decide to read the Hawthorn Letters, Matilda prefers referring to him as Mr. Buttons in her letters. It would seem more appropriate. I'm a cat lady through and through. I adore cats, and I especially dream of having a long-haired ginger cat. So I just thought I would channel that into this character and have this very, very ancient seeming character who has lived many lives but is a talking cat, which is absurd. There was something so childish and fun about excavating this project and discovering, you know, furthering my idea and really seeing the vision come to life. That is such an enjoyable process, and yeah, it was just really fun. And I remember feeling so ecstatic when I first got this idea. It was really like a light bulb that lit up in my head, and I immediately just had this longing, this thirst to start working on this story. I have trouble connecting with the more childish side of me. My childhood was cut short. I grew up very quickly, and so I feel like I missed out on a lot of things, and I gave up a very childish aspect of me very quickly, and I feel like this is sort of a way back to that, and there's something quite beautiful about that. So that is kind of why I had this idea, and what pushed me to choose absurd fiction, because it's such a fun genre and there's so much to explore within absurd fiction. And the fun thing about absurd fiction is that it doesn't have to make sense, which I kept getting worried about, and I'm still worried about it actually. But at the beginning I had some ideas, but I thought to myself, but people are gonna find this weird because it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense that Matilda's preferred mode of transportation is a hot air balloon. She travels by hot air balloon, okay? That doesn't make sense, but it took me a while to realise that it does not have to make sense. That is what is so enthralling about writing absurd fiction, is that you can basically write whatever you want. There are no rules, and it was very frightening for me at first, because I'm someone who needs rules and I love rules, and I always seek to be as perfect as I can be. Stepping out of that was very difficult, and it still is very difficult, because I'm still questioning whether or not people are going to find this weird. People are going to say, this is nonsense, this is absolutely nonsensical. But that's kind of the fun in it. I can just let my imagination flow and pour onto the paper and see what happens, see where it takes me, and that is such an enjoyable part of the process. I feel like those questions have sort of dwindled away, and I'm now getting more accustomed to nonsense and I'm less questioning whether or not it actually makes sense or not, and I'm slowly giving up this idea that it has to make sense, that it absolutely has to respect certain rules and boundaries. I found the Chris Riddell books that I was mentioning earlier at the beginning of the process, and I flipped through them, and I just thought, this is so brilliant. I needed to step out of this extremely orderly environment that I constantly lock my brain in. I'm someone who has overflowing thoughts. I often drown in my own thoughts. Yeah, I just think a lot, and that's why I write. I must write, because otherwise, I think if I didn't write, I wouldn't be me. It's in my DNA. There is ink and words in my veins. Even as like an experiment to see if I was capable of stepping out of those rules, if I forced myself to, and if I found the right characters and the right story. And I think that I've been able to do that with Matilda and Mr. Buttons, and it's just incredibly exciting. It even furthered my passion for writing because I just discovered a whole new facet of it that I was also capable of participating in. So I actually just finished writing the first letter, and so now I want to talk about the platform. I discovered Substack a few months ago and I thought that it was such a great platform. I thought it was so wonderful, and it really allows writers from all over the world, from entirely different backgrounds, and who write so incredibly differently, to connect and to find each other. Just find to be absolutely glorious to have such a platform available to all authors, whether you have just started writing or you've been writing for 20 years. I mean, there are huge writers on this platform. I follow Patti Smith, Joyce Carol Oates. I just think it's really brilliant. I immediately thought this is the perfect platform for me because I've been working towards putting my work out into the world more. I've always been incredibly timid. Sharing things that I've created has always been incredibly difficult for me because I often dislike or even loathe my work, and I am absolutely terrified of what others will think of it. So for the longest time I did not share my writing. I never even let my parents read it. It was something that was incredibly intimate and personal to me, and it still is incredibly intimate. My writing is, every time I write, I'm leaving a part of myself with that writing. It's incredibly demanding for me, but I thought this was a platform that was meant for that, and I need to work towards that, because if I want to be a writer, and if I want to perhaps maybe one day live off of my writing, then I must get accustomed to doing this. So I started my Substack a few months ago. However, I have been dealing with the difficulty of acquiring visibility and engagement. I know that the point is not to, gain followers and all of that, because I frankly don't care about that much. I don't want millions of followers. It's not the goal, it's not the point. But I have been at a very stagnant point for months now, and I must admit that part of it is due to consistency, and because I have a big problem known as a work-life balance problem, I am completely unable to find a balance between academia and my personal interests, passions and hobbies. And because I rely on academia and academic validation so heavily, I set everything aside and I just focus on that. It takes a lot out of me, because I remember when I got the idea for Matilda and the Hawthorn Letters, I felt like I was betraying myself because I was setting it aside. I felt this gut-wrenching yearning for my pen and paper. So this is why I'm only now publishing the Hawthorn Letters, because I'm done with uni. Like, I finished my second year of uni 2 weeks ago now, and I only have 2 things left and then it's sorted. I'm done with my second year. I am really struggling with writing into the void. I understand, because I'm not as consistent as I would like to be. Now I'm hoping to be more consistent because I'm done with uni. So, because it takes so much out of me to actually hit publish. So I've actually written a few things on that, so I think I would like to read some of it. I think it would illustrate my point better than just me rambling. I think I express myself better with my written words. First of all, to illustrate my point, I thought I would read you the first note that I posted on Substack. I've been desiring to post notes, however I find myself stuck within the confines of my undying perfectionism. And I know it is silly, because The aim of notes on Substack is simply to share one's thoughts as they are, or a fun fact, a quote, a photo or piece of writing, etc. Yet I have found myself repeatedly searching for the right thing to post, when it seems rather clear that there is no right way to go about this, and what I am endlessly searching for does not exist. So I could keep exhausting myself over this first rather daunting note, but I will choose not to, simply because after examining every possibility, what is the use of this endless circle of vice, besides keeping me locked within the walls of my own mind and stuck in the claws of my craving for perfection? All of this to say, this is my first note and I am scared to post it. But here we are, an imperfect first try. So that is the first note I posted a few days ago. And since then, I've written another one, but I think the one that makes sense now to share is this one. Sending my poetry out into the world feels incredibly vulnerable and terrifying. I know it will be seen and judged, therefore I will be seen and judged. One of my submissions was rejected, and it was painful, more so than what I had anticipated, because I had prepared myself with this very real possibility. I am not confident, and I dislike, if not loathe, most of my work. Yet there remains a minuscule sliver of hope seemingly shielding itself from my hatred, a small dim light that refuses to go out, despite my many attempts to smother it. I've been reflecting on this very much, even in my journal. It has nothing to do with people and, it's just the unfairness of every platform at this point. And I'm also really bad at selling myself. I don't share a lot on social media. I'm not putting things forward, and so I don't think I'm helping myself by doing that. Again, this really is not a cry for help, and I don't want this to seem like a pity party. I think expressing the reality of many writers today. I don't think I'm alone in this. All that to say that it is incredibly vulnerable to finally share this story, because as I was saying, I've poured so much of myself into it, and in Matilda, she doesn't look like me physically, but a lot of the things that she does resemble me and my neurodivergent nature as an autistic person, and she is very much a scholar who has an old soul. She has a commonplace book, as I do. She loves tartan. I love tartan. She reads poetry. Keats is one of her favourite poets. One of my favourite poets as well. She loves travelling. She has a very otherworldly perception of the world. And also her favourite meal, which also happens to be my favourite meal, is baked beans and an English breakfast tea. She does have many traits that I also carry. So she is very personal, perhaps less smoothed over version of me, because I always try to appear a certain way because I'm afraid of being perceived by people. Matilda doesn't have that at all. Matilda is completely otherworldly, and she looks like she doesn't even belong in the 21st century, and she doesn't behave like a person who lives in the 21st century. She doesn't really care because she doesn't really notice what other people think of her. She completely misses out on that, and because of that, she is so deeply, unequivocally her. And that's what I love about her, and that is why she's so precious to me. I've written a few stories when I was a child, but I haven't elaborated a character like I've elaborated Matilda. Matilda is my first character that I've formed and that I've crafted a narrative for, that intricate. So she is inherently special to me because of that, because she is my first character, and Mr. Buttons too. Yeah, I am very excited about this project, and I hope that can sort of translate through the screen. I chose the format of letters because to me, first of all, it's what made sense when I was writing the narrative. But I also think it's so fitting for Substack. I'm hoping to be more consistent in the coming months. I'm hoping to write a new letter every 2 to 3 weeks. I would really appreciate any sort of support. I'm going to link my Substack in the description below, and I would really, really love it if you went to take a look at it. And I'm going to publish a guide to the Hawthorn Letters very soon, and then publish the first letter. I want to thank you for your support, even though I haven't been present on YouTube recently. You are still here, and that is marvellous. I think I don't talk enough about my writing here, and I'm really trying to do that more. I have ideas. I'm hoping to, you know, explore different branches of my life on my YouTube channel, mainly writing and literature. And again, thank you so much for being here, and I really hope that if you do read the Hawthorn Letters, you enjoy them. With that being said, I think I've talked for a long time now, so I'm going to stop, and we'll see you soon. Bye!